welcome. It is Friday, and we might have people trickling in a little slower than normal because we're hearing from a few people that the auto reminder saying that we're going live didn't go out, but hopefully the one that says we just went live will go out in just a second. If not, Urvashi, I may have you jump in and do the quick email attendees. I think you can do that under options and tell everyone we just went live just so we can make sure everyone gets in today, because this is going to be a really cool conversation talking about JumpCloud and artificial intelligence. I know we had back in August, we had a discussion around Chat GPT and AI, but this is going to be more specific to us. So I think it's going to be a lot of fun. Today is December 1st. We're already at the end of the year. Today is the last of 3 episodes, and then we're done for the year, if you can believe that. So welcome everyone to the IT Hour. I'm Becky Scott, your host. We've got Urvashi, our technical champion, with us again. We're back after the Thanksgiving holiday. Lindsey is back with us again, one of our product leaders. So thanks for coming back, Lindsey. And Hugh Neale, principal engineer, first time on the show. Welcome, Hugh. Glad to have you. And oh, you're on mute if you wanted to say hi.
A bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, last week we had a break due to the U.S. Thanksgiving. Did you guys and gals do anything interesting or just kind of hang out and take a break?
I was in Sri Lanka, and I don't know if you can tell, but I worked on my tan. It was so beautiful. It's such a beautiful country. I ate so much good food. It was a nice solo trip after a long time. So while everybody else was freezing in the US, I was getting my vitamin D.
Very nice.
Yeah, I think we got it was that night, Thanksgiving night, about 8 ounces in Jamestown.
Very nice.
We seem to be adopting more and more US traditions in the UK. Halloween's a big deal now, and whilst we're not obviously celebrating Thanksgiving, it certainly seems to be using it as a bit of a dry run now.
That's great.
I put my cat away because apparently he's distracting Keith with the door opening.
That's awesome. Yeah, we just stayed home and had a little bit of too much food and relaxed. It was a little cool, but not too cold. It's actually gotten colder this week. We were down to 20 degrees now, and this is the South, and I'm not happy about it. So, but yeah, I'm looking forward to the holiday break too, where I will get even longer than just about a week. Rob says about your cat, when the cat learns how to door, that's when the deaths start happening. So I don't know.
Luckily for me, he can't pull the door handle, so that's good. He just manages to push past it.
Yeah, I don't know which deaths. I don't know whether that means you or other small creatures.
It could be total annihilation, the end of life as we know it.
Yep. It's like the bunny in the Holy Monty Python, the Holy Grail. It looks cute and small and furry, but watch out. All cats are murderers just waiting to happen. Great.
I'm with you, Rob. I'm on my first cat, and there's latent fear always. Like he's if he has catnip, things go south. And it happens to grow naturally here. So during the summer, you're like, did he go outside? Did he get whiffed through the window? Because he starts going into, I don't know, angry drunk mode. I don't.
The internet calls it the zoomies. which my cat gets in the middle of the night.
Oh, but they get the zoomies without catnip. It's different when there's catnip involved. It's like
Oh,
homicidal zoomies or something. I don't know.
Zoomies Extreme. In today's episode,
Yeah.
5 people
Stupid violence.
reported.
It brings out violence in him. And I grew up a dog person, but when cats
No.
latch on and
No, mine just get like just kind of lay around like, hey man, what's up? Like they just get stupid, you know. They don't they just lay around and roll in it and be like, dude, what's happening? Hey, cool.
I love it.
Yeah. It mellows them out. They don't get zoomies. They're just like don't want to do anything. So all righty. Well, now that we've talked about high cats,
That was a good
we're
segue.
gonna get into the agenda today. As usual, we're gonna talk about community update, product news, and then we will jump into the main event, talking about exploring artificial intelligence. And then if we have time at the end, we will of course talk about IT news. All right, so jumping into it, lots of activity on the community since it's been, I guess, 2 weeks since we had our update. So Jurgen has been busy again. He's got a couple of Python scripts in the community. One is a self-service software installation portal v1 and hosting on AWS Lightsail using a Docker image, and also ChatGPT JumpCloud Assistant unofficial beta with a fast API bridge on AWS Lightsail. So Jurgen's been doing some really cool stuff with scripts over the past year and a half. So definitely lots to look at from him. In Carmichael posted in product discussions about, are you interested in JC adding, remove managing SQL users as it does for OS users, and posted some helpful tips around that. And Arshbot asked a question about relay state missing when using Arc browser. And I belatedly posted my cranberry salsa recipe. So sorry it was after the holiday, but I forgot before I went on vacation and then didn't feel like logging in while I was on vacation. So you got it after the fact. So maybe you can save it for the next time you make turkey or other poultry that you might want to try it out. But like I said, it's good stuff. So give it a try. And then on product discussions, we also had JumpCloud Radius implementation windows, which I believe was some instructions on how to do that. And then Carrot posted on the scripts repo, install software with Google Drive as the file repo. So lots of good scripts this time. So go check those out. And hey, if you've got a good script, go feel free to add them, please. And under product releases and announcements, if you didn't see this yet, Derek has posted an update for dynamic groups, which is really cool because there's a lot going on there. So there's a new major OS version experience. All orgs now have a new experience around configuring dynamic groups for devices where certain attributes have prerequisite attributes that are required before they become available. So, for example, distribution only becomes available when OS family equals Linux. This would be where the admin can set the appropriate distribution for Linux devices that belong in the group. Version new attribute only becomes available when OS family equals Windows. This would be where the admin can select the appropriate Windows version, example 10 Pro, 11 Enterprise, etc., for Windows devices that belong in the group. And OS major version requires the selection of OS family first and is unavailable for Windows. Note that all current Windows currently have an OS major version equals 10. So those are just a few examples on that. There's also user attributes. Manager, we're making available the manager attribute as a selectable attribute for dynamic groups for users. It will function just like the manager attribute does within the user object. If a rule is created where manager equals John Smith, all users that have John Smith as their manager in the user object will be returned by the group query. And also company email. The targeted use case for this attribute is to be able to configure dynamic user groups by a rule leveraging email domain. This attribute needs new operators like contains or ends with to become relevant. We're going to hold off on enabling this attribute until we have those operators. I'll tell you more about that in additional operators below for details.
I have a note on that coming from directory land. We've heard many times, can you just auto reassign users to Google? Say you import them from Google and you want them to then be exported to Google. This is your answer. A dynamic group with that email domain that you want to have in Google. So just a tip associated to that.
Nice.
Okay.
Very, very nice. So under the additional operators, I'll skip to that real quick. One of the biggest improvements that we felt we needed to make was more flexible operators beyond equals, doesn't equal, greater than, less than. We had always planned to add more capability with contains, doesn't contain, and starts with, ends with operators for string value attributes. Something else that we are fixing is the ability to select multiple values for not equals operator, and we're currently targeting sometime in January for rolling those out. And there's one more under device attributes. Like for vendor, starting today, we're making available the vendor attribute as a selectable attribute for dynamic groups for devices. This attribute provides an additional level of flexibility beyond just the OS family. Public IP address, we're making available the public IP address as a selectable attribute for dynamic groups for devices. We were torn on this one as to whether or not to wait until we had more operators like company email. On the user attributes side, contains, starts with, ends with, will make this attribute more valuable, but we chose to go ahead and make it available today as there was enough interest even with the current operators, equals, not equals. And lastly, hostname. We recognize that hostname or device name conventions vary quite a bit, but we felt this attribute also needs some of the new operators to have any value as an attribute rule. We are going to hold off on enabling this until we have those new operators, like the contains, doesn't contain, starts with, ends with. So more on that soon as well. We will have a link to Derek's post that goes into a lot more detail. This is just some of the highlights of that, but always still more to come on that. Please continue to give us your feedback on what you want to see or don't want to see on that, because we really want to make sure that you get everything you can out of that. So thanks for the additional ad on there, Lindsey. Appreciate that. Oh, Stuart, you tested the cranberry yesterday. Yay! I'm glad you did that. Awesome. All right. With that, let's jump into our main topic. We're going to hand it off to Hugh and Lindsey and let you well, first off, Hugh, since this is your first time on the IT Hour, why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about what you do here at JumpCloud?
Thank you. Yes, so I joined JumpCloud back in late February of this year, 2023, following an acquisition of my company, Security, which was a cybersecurity company mainly focused on compliance using OS Query and a number of other open source platforms. And since then, come into Labs as part of come into JumpCloud as part of the Labs team. And our mandate is basically to see interesting and new innovative technologies, products, ideas that are floating around on the internet. Can they be relevant to JumpCloud? Hence, obviously, artificial intelligence is obviously a big one at the moment. But yeah, really trying to come up with those sort of bigger moonshot ideas, which might not always land all the time, but it's always good to try and figure out whether these things make sense or not. Cool. I shall share my screen then and kick things off. Cool. I'm assuming everyone can see that.
So, frequently asked questions. AI is making the rounds in the news. People are trying it out. You're seeing it pop up in different products, and so we want to not just talk about AI, but talk about AI within the context of JumpCloud. So, what are we doing with this new technology? Why do we feel like it's worthwhile to invest in AI? What are the right tools? Because there are quite a few approaches you can take within the realm of AI. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that. Specifically, Hugh is our master of of that technology. Do we have anything to show yet? And things are like, hey, AI is using data, it's learning. How does that relate to our data and the ownership or privacy over data relating to your particular organizations? So those are some of the topics that we will cover in today's conversation. And again, why AI? I'm going to let Hugh give you a little bit more context around AI.
Thanks, Lindsey. So AI or machine learning really isn't that new. It's been around for a very, very long time now. The big things that obviously have changed is computers have got a lot faster, and there's a phenomenal amount of data that we can now, train using those much bigger GPUs and memory. And this kind of hit a bit of an inflection point in 2017 when the idea of transformers came into the mainstream with, and this is basically what OpenAI kind of figured out and saw as a transformative leap in how we do large language models, or AI as we know it, moving forward to AGI in the future. So that's been really interesting. Those big developments, but how can we use it?
Yes. So the product person here is like, oh, great, exciting tech. And, I think, like I said, a lot of organizations a lot of products are starting to introduce AI to their products. I don't know about you, but there are some areas where I've seen it be effective. And then there are a lot of areas that are a little bit, I don't know, I don't trust it yet. Right? I don't trust it, or I'm not sure how to engage with it. And those are some of the considerations that JumpCloud considered when we were looking at how we might want to use AI. But if you think of what AI is capable of doing and some of the natural language processing, a lot of it comes down to being able to engage data that lives out in the world in a more natural way. And we will talk more about that. But when we thought about our product and what data people want and need access to, it became very clear pretty quickly what areas of opportunity we wanted to start to dive into. So just in the realm of insights, and I'm speaking specifically to system insights and directory insights, collectively within this year, 150 plus organizations have submitted feature requests. So when I tell you we listen to feature requests, we absolutely do. And some of what we look at is the volume of requests that we're getting in certain areas to understand the kind of pain or friction or opportunity that we have. And so, here's just a sampling of some of the requests that do relate to how can I query the data better, right? So it'd be nice, for instance, to have a possibility to collect system insights data per device from JumpCloud admin console directly. But at the moment, that automatic frequency, not that often. I mean, you can see, let me see what's a really nice, concise one here. I want to use system insights to see if a device has Firefox installed. I can use SI to check a specific device, but I cannot use system insights to determine how many devices in my fleet have Firefox installed. So it really comes down to, you've got this pool of data here and you're trying to get at it, but the methods that we are providing you today to get to that data require a lot of overhead from you. You're going and doing a lot of redundant tasks just to extract that data, not coming out in the format you want it, etc. So these are some of the considerations from a customer request perspective that we do think we can address. Now, there are others, I'm not going to lie. Not all 150 requests relating to SI and DI are going to be solved by AI. There are depth requests. I want more information about certain activities, certain events. So I just want to, be a little bit transparent about that. We're not going to solve all the problems, but this is an area of opportunity identified. And realistically, though, there are some limitations that we have to respect. And some of the challenges with LLMs relate to how can these language models dig into complex subjects where there may be a lot of superficial data available, but when we need to go deeper and answer some harder questions, there are limitations in its ability to do that. Math, again, it's looking at language that's available, so it's not actually doing compute necessarily for, to answer a question that you leverage or put out there in the world. Sorry, I'm still a little tired today, so I'm going to trip over my tongue a few times. Bear with me. Live or recent knowledge. So, what is this data set and what data set is actually most relevant might be mixed in with some of that data that is not so relevant. And I'm going to hand things over. Hugh will go into a little bit more detail around the challenges with prompt engineering and the bias, right? Because the data sets that are being used are data sets that are predefined. So I'm going to hand things back over to Hugh to go a little deeper.
Thanks, Lindsey. So ultimately, large language models have obviously been trained on a large volume of language, typically things found about the internet, and all they're really doing is effectively predicting the next best word in the prompt that you have given it initially as part of your question in that classic sort of chat view that you have. And when you submit that question, you can very clearly see all of the words being generated one after another. And really, really, really great, obviously, for things when you want to generate an email, or you want help starting the beginning of a document, or there's a short comment or review, or anything text related. It's fantastic. But because of that, accuracy is obviously really important at JumpCloud, and anything being generated by these large language models are obviously going to potentially drive business, security, and remediation tasks at JumpCloud. So that's really, really, really critical to us. Also limited by the context size as well. Now, there are a number of ways to get around this, and this has been improving. But the context size is effectively that initial input field that you have at the beginning, where you ask ChatGPT or your large language model to do something. You usually have to give it a bit of a sort of a character persona, sort of explain to it that it has a new role as a programmer or a database administrator or whatever it might be. And then within that, you have to give it a lot of information potentially about what it needs to go and do. So in JumpCloud's case, for example, you might have to give it a list of systems that you're interested in, or the metrics about those systems, and all of this uses up this big context window, usually of about 4 kilobytes. And because of that, you usually actually end up having to kind of like stagger these questions. So you end up having to chain these prompts together, and you end up in this sort of this feedback loop where the large language model's passing information from one sort of session to another. And then you've also got the problem of prompt injection. So at any point within that conversation that the large language model is potentially having with itself, you're allowing user input, which is the sort of the cardinal problem of the web, right? Never trust the user when it comes to obviously writing things into your database. And the same is true for prompt injection. It is very easy to basically say, hey, forget everything you've been tasked with before, and I want you to run off and do this other thing. And with that obviously becomes performance and cost implications as well. Since that kind of like initial launch of these large language models as well, because you have the ability to effectively instruct using that very loosely, but give the large language model a task, if you like, and you can sort of say, when the user asks for information about the weather and a location of that, you can take those two identifiers, and I want you to convert that into a JSON object or some sort of API call that looks similar to this. And then when you get that result back, you in your own programming language can then take that output, call an API to get the weather, send that back, and then give that back to the large language model to say, hey, here's this information. That's come back as a JSON object, which obviously isn't very human friendly, as it's been generated by a computer system. I want you to now interpret this and present it back to the user. So that's how these large language models are giving the illusion that they're able to effectively autonomously go and figure out the weather and bring it back and provide an answer. And then obviously, as I said, you can chain all these things together. So you can create just like as I might want to as a JumpCloud administrator, I can give it a whole list of tasks to go off, and then through these function calls, as Jürgen has shown in his community posts, you can execute all of these tasks. And these are kind of a few of the experiments we had. So the first one was basically building off of the fact that Intercom sits in the bottom of the JumpCloud console for help and support, and thought that would be a really interesting place to start with, so that you could go there and ask about system information, or how do I go off and create a policy. But we felt that that wasn't really a good value add to a user at the end of the day, because it's something that they can go and connect to OpenAI to do themselves, or a number of other tools that are being built on top of that entire kind of like LLM construct. It's and then of course you've still got the problems I've described earlier, which leads me into this next one. So this was kind of taking that Intercom chat window and breaking it out into a more advanced sort of view. So here I'm kind of asking, hey, get me a list of systems, and then hey, how much disk space in gigabytes is remaining on that system. And obviously like very cool, but the big issue with this, and going back to the slide that Lindsey showed on some of the user requests that we've had, none of this is being solved in aggregate, right? So if I want to instruct a large language model to go and get all of the systems on my network and figure out which ones are running critically low on disk space, the large language model basically has to do exactly what you would do writing a Python or PowerShell script, connecting to the API, iterating through all of the systems or devices, then iterating through all the system insights calls, retrieving all that data, and then trying to format it. And that's really expensive for a large language model to do. It takes a lot of time. These APIs are quite complicated. And then finally, you've got that problem of all this information is being returned. And that's a lot of text for an LLM to sort of digest and process. And you've got those artifacts and those hallucinations which can start to sort of creep in, and even system information has been swapped around and everything else, giving completely unreliable results and information, and obviously taking a vast sum of time as well. So yeah, just to summarize, very, very good if you're doing a specific sort of task with these LLMs for function calls. So add a task, remove a task, get the weather, check flight information. But when it comes to aggregate or more complex API tasks, such as JumpCloud and all the data that we have spanning devices, identity, and security, these requests just take a huge amount of time to be planned, and the results look impressive in sort of small tests, but ultimately don't really solve a lot of the problems that our admins have. So I'll hand it back to you, Lindsey.
Yes, we tie these challenges back to our solution and what really ground ourselves and what are the needs, right? What are we looking to provide you? You need accurate information first and foremost. So how can we craft this so that we are working around the limitations, the hallucinations, we're feeding it the right data. Timely responses. So you're not going to want to ask a question and wait for hours. You need to be able to get a quick response. You are going to need to access specifically the data that we have within directory insights and system insights. Reporting is something we want to get to. Can we solve through that or solve for that with this? Maybe, maybe not. But we know that is a need. And then simplified and natural access to data is really, when it comes down to it, we're asking you to go through hoops today to either construct the right query in a DI UI, or go and dig into different parts of our system UI to get to particular pieces of information. And really what you're needing is a more simplified way of asking a question and accessing the data. So where we've landed.
Can I just add that?
Oh, yes.
A lot of the ways that admins will try and build reports or get data out of the system at the moment is obviously through PowerShell and REST APIs and things like that. And obviously those things take a lot of time to run as well. And you've obviously got the overhead of building those things, or using JumpCloud solutions team to help build those things too, which if you're asked after information quickly, it's not ideal.
Good call. So in the solution, we want to use this natural language interface to enable admins to ask questions to JumpCloud directory using plain English to retrieve forms of information out of JumpCloud's various asset and transactional data stores. So we know what those are, our system insights and our directory insights primarily. And specifically, with no knowledge of SQL or RESTful API. So we're not going to ask you to even go so far as to engage a PowerShell, for instance. The idea is that this is very simple and accessible to all of our IT admins, as well as doesn't require the overhead or the time, even for those admins that are quite capable.
Cool, thank you. So going back to what large language models are really good at, large language models are really good at text and generating text. And there are a number of models available that are very good at generating code. And you've seen it with GitHub's Copilot, a number of the other sort of Microsoft projects in that pool. You can have a little text prompt and it will go ahead and generate a whole bunch of code for you. Might not necessarily be 100%, but most cases it does a really good job of actually generating code. And SQL is really no different to that. And bigger applications out on the internet, so big SaaS companies, which have the same problem whereby they have all of this fantastic data. If you look at one of the big ticketing and code management platforms, they provide SQL style interfaces to be able to allow that customizability, as well as one of the biggest CRM tools on the platform as well. They have these APIs to let you construct direct SQL queries to their databases to get back the information that you need, which is a bit of an old school way of doing it. And then GraphQL has a lot of flexibility to give you direct access to the data that resides in those data stores as well. But again, you've got to have real intimate knowledge of these table structures, these APIs, and what information's there, how you put it out, build it together, and of course you have to program all this information that you have as well. So the idea that we've sort of landed on is it's great to be able to have direct access to the database with SQL, but the problem is obviously having knowledge of the database structures and generating that SQL. Large language models, very, very good at generating SQL. So, I can take a question, very good at generating SQL, and then we can then execute that against the database to retrieve fast, accurate, uninterpreted results from the database that haven't been, pre-processed and made sort of ambiguous by a large language model. So we have built our JumpCloud AI platform. We're calling it the natural language interface, whereby you can ask a question, it will generate the query, and it will go and execute it and bring the results back for you. This is currently in early access, so at the end of this demonstration, we have a channel in Slack, and we also obviously have contactable via email and everything else. And we're very, very keen to obviously see what the community thinks about it and get lots of feedback and see if this is something that people find useful. So we have basically built our own large language model, which we have trained for months now on the topology of JumpCloud's database systems, how what that data looks like, how it is related to one another. I will add, just to be clear, this has not been trained on the actual data in the database. This is purely just the actual topology and schema of it, so that when you ask your question, it can correctly identify how to go and query and retrieve that information. So a really interesting one would be the example I gave before, where you want to figure out which systems might be running low on disk space. The large language model has to come up with the correct query to go and do that. And without being pre-trained, it might go and find what it thinks is probably the right tables to go and query. But there are some subtle differences and language that's used when it comes to IT administration that a generic large language model wouldn't be able to guess. So with that, I will kick over to a demo. So this is, so we've set up sort of JumpCloud.ai. Before you all run and try and connect to it, it is internal only, or unless you've been invited to the early access program. But essentially the way it works is you can click login and it will take you through the administrative console login process. And then, well, actually I can show this. And then we then connect to that, we provision you an account, and once it's gone through the process, you'll then kick back to the previous page, and you can then actually query all of your data that that you have in your JumpCloud tenant. But I'm going to just stick to the demo for now. So what can we do? So we can ask really simple questions. So how many systems do I have? And we can click query, and you can see immediately, very simple query that's run, instantaneous results and accurate results too. And accounts, great, but how many systems by OS? And I can get back a list of systems by operating system as well as account. But maybe I want version information as well. I can get the versions as well. So I've not had to dig into anything and run around. I can just quickly ask a question and get a result. So which system has the least amount of disk space? So much more complicated query, sifting through all of that and giving you a simple result back. Or which systems have FDE? So FDE, full disk encryption, right? It might not necessarily know that that's what it relates to in some of the other models, but because we've trained this one on what that terminology means, it is able to go and get that information out of the database and bring it back. Or which users have 2FA enabled. Okay, well, no one does, so that's that's obviously something I need to go and sort out. Yeah, and this works with get me a list of programs. Which systems have Chrome installed, or which systems across Windows have Chrome installed, or which ones don't have the latest version, or it's open ended, and that's we've got to a point now where we've had this model, we've trained it on all of these questions, and we're in a good place with it, and that's where we want to start to open it up to customers to start to see what questions you guys are asking, and improve the model further before we can get to a point, hopefully, where this ends up in the product as part of a sort of a global search, and you can get the results that you need, export them, perform remediations, do reporting, and beyond that, there's lots of really interesting future development that comes out of this as well. But I shall pause for now and see if there's any questions.
We see a lot of, I want to test, how do I test? But I know you're going to share that.
Yeah, so if you...
All right, so let me add the Slack Lounge link. So at the bottom there, you should be able to click that to get over to the Slack Lounge.
Yeah, so if you come on over to the Slack Lounge, and we'll sort of coordinate in there how to...
The channel is JumpCloud AI, and Keith, to answer your question, that is internal only, and you have to be given permission to get into that. So that's why once we get your volunteering, we can get you into that.
Yeah, because this is completely separate from JumpCloud, if you like. It's hosted on a separate domain, and the whole part of that login process is to basically make sure that you're giving consent and your data is being accessed by this new system.
Yes, so exactly what we're looking for, like all of these people excited about it. We want to get your hands on this, and we'll be working to make that possible. But just knowing how many people actually want to try it out is valuable in and of itself. We'll probably, for those that participate, we will request that you engage with us to provide direct feedback around what you experience, what you would like from it that you're not able to see in the POC, so on and so forth. And it's not something that we're ready to, I think, turn on for an organization tomorrow. But it is something that and Hugh, correct me if I'm wrong, we're hoping, early 2024 is around where we're hoping to get this into hands. Is that an accurate statement? I know
Yeah, just really the appetite is for this sort of thing at the moment, and sit down with a few of you who are really interested. Just get on a call to really understand what you think, how this might help. Certainly, run through some of the questions that you have through the demo, and then when we're in that state, we can really move it out to EA and invite everybody in to use it, because there's a few more systems that we want to connect up to it as well, because some of the internal testing that's been done, people will ask questions that just aren't, the data's not there in the back end of the system to answer that question, and obviously that's very disappointing when you've got expectations that it can answer all the questions and it doesn't. So just connecting a few more data sources in, but when you guys get your hands on it, you will be able to just ask as many questions to your heart's content.
So you've raised your hand in these chats. I think we'll log that too. But in the Slack lounge, that's when
they're already
already
saying, please enroll me. So we will have to reach out and get the information that we need to officially get you enrolled and everything. But yeah, we've got 3 people raising their hands, actually 4, because we had one person that just kind of plussed one, somebody else's, but we've got 7 people that have joined the group. At least 4 of them have raised their hands. So I think that's a pretty good response overall. So,
and we look forward to talking to you all. I mean, this is an exciting area. So,
Jeff,
okay.
Sorry, Lindsey. Jeff's made a good comment. I mean, obviously, provided this sort of stuff goes well, and you have the ability to obviously use natural language to construct queries to get the data that you need, it becomes a natural way of then taking that data and feeding it into other large language models or remediation steps or whatever it might be, or even things like dynamic groups, and it becomes less about having to figure out how to filter and do all of these things, and comes down to just having to describe these things in words and have it provide accurate information.
So there is a question here, and I want to invite more, but this might have been mentioned, but will JumpCloud be deploying the ability to grab system insights in the moment, to grab up-to-date app information? So I'm assuming software applications is what we're asking about here.
Yep. So you can ask that at the moment. So if I go back to the demo, we can just say, get me a list of installed programs, and you've got a list of all the programs there and their version, and you can break that down onto Windows. You can say, hey, give me an aggregate of what are the most common applications, which ones are out of date. It's really there to have all the data's there, the natural language there's to SQL, and anything that you can do in SQL, you can just obviously construct the question to create that SQL, and it'll go off and query it. It's extremely flexible.
Well, this is great. Any other questions? And make sure we get all of those.
Becky, I marked a few which are in the questions tab. I think if we're good with those, then we're okay.
All right. So we already did the where do you request early access, and just so. Well, I'm trying to mark it as answered, but it's just spinning. But so we have it on the recording. Go to the Slack lounge and go into the JumpCloud AI channel, newly created, and you can say, please enroll me. And we will reach out to get the information we need and get your official declaration of, yes, we are going to do this, and go from there. And it is still spinning. And then the other one was, this might have been mentioned, but will JumpCloud be deploying the ability to grab system insights in the moment to grab up-to-date app information? That was the one that you just answered for Keith, Lindsey.
Yeah.
So
So it'll have live direct access to all of your data. So it's not like it's you'll be having stale data to query. It will be live.
Awesome. I think those were the only two.
I have a question. Am I going to be out of a job? Is this going to take over my job, Hugh and Lindsey? Is the technical community champion just going to be an AI bot now? Oh.
I don't think we're there. You know, if you take a step back and look at AI really broadly, I think, and machine learning as well, there are a lot of perhaps exciting opportunities to to make decisions on behalf of IT admins, but I don't think we necessarily can claim smart decisions in this moment without all of the technicalities and limitations that we've called out. Are you an analyst? I think would be the question. Maybe.
Nathan's saying, I think with all things AI, one of the biggest concerns is data protection. Is this circumvented because the model itself is not storing the actual data, but instead only generating queries to access it?
So very good question, and you're 100% right. So not only is this JumpCloud's own model, so no data is heading off to OpenAI or any other large language model vendor, but yes, because we're just generating the SQL itself, that's the only thing that's sort of generated, and that gets sent to be executed in the exact same place all the data already resides at the moment. So no data is being copied and sent out to anywhere else to be interpreted or anything else. You are just getting your results through, well, in the future through the JumpCloud console, like you would do in the future.
Hopefully that answered what you wanted to know, Nathan. Yeah, this is exciting stuff. I think it's going to be really interesting to see where it goes and where it develops from here. I think some of the things you mentioned around accuracy and keeping it from hallucinating and, like swapping information between systems and things like that will be maybe one of the challenges, like it not making stuff up over time. Like if you've got a really long list of things that you want to ask, and I guess over time trusting the information it gives you, that it's not swapping some things or things like that. I guess that'll be where it'll be difficult for some people. I mean, have you talked through any of that yet?
So there's no, because it's executing against the database directly, there's no it won't interpret or do anything with data. You are just getting the raw output back from the query that you run, and because it's just being run against the database, it's fast and accurate. And live as well. So it's the latest representation of that data at that moment. So the big use case for me, having worked in prior roles in security operations as well, there's always someone running up to your desk and going, is this patched? Which machines don't have this? And and you've then got to spend 10 minutes to an hour compiling some sort of report to figure that out. And having the ability to just ask a question, have that be transformed, executed against the database, and have that real-time information back, I think is going to be massive.
That's good. That's good that it's just querying directly and not do anything more. Nathan wants to know, was there a way to then export the results to, say, CSV, XLS, or PDF?
Yeah, no, we'll have that. And just seen Jeff's comment on SQL injection as well. Obviously thought about that one quite a lot.
That's good. That's really good.
That's a follow-up to the download to CSV. Do we have any long-term plans to make charts and reports and things like that?
Yeah. So if this experiment proves successful, then yes, we're going to do all of that. The things that I'm really interested and excited about are things like trending topics or things like that. So when you come in the morning, potentially there's already questions already there for you to answer. If there's been another vulnerability discovered in your favorite app or whatever it is, that query is there ready to run immediately, and you've not got to go and think about it or build it or do it. It's just there. Mixing that in with all the reporting and everything else, I think is going to be very powerful.
I think from a compliance perspective also, there's been a few conversations in the lounge, in the Slack lounge and in the community about, how do I know which devices are compliant with which, protocols and government guidelines and things like that. So I think that'll also be really cool.
Yeah. So you can ask, which devices have failing policies. And again, you can run those queries on aggregate as well to get counts of the most common failing policies and why they're failing.
Yeah, Nathan's saying reporting has been a pain point for a long time. And as Lindsey alluded to, being able to handle that need via AI would be really helpful. So hopefully that works out.
Yes. And I think, when Hugh comes from a compliance background. And so when we think about reporting, there's reporting against, say, hey, are all of the policies that I've applied actually applied? Are they functioning on my devices? And then there's a different question of, is it meeting a certain standard? And so I want to just kind of call out, there's are we satisfying whatever policies you have constructed versus a government benchmark, for instance, is two different ball games. And when we get into the big C compliance, there are more considerations. There's more data that we would have to be tapping on. So I think there will still be a need for you to translate what data you need today to answer those compliance questions. So it's actually a hot topic. I just came out of a week-long product 2024 product leader summit, and it was compliance was a hot topic. I think first step is making sure that it's easy for you to get the data that you need to go and answer those questions.
Yeah, and there's a conversation going on in the chat where Urvashi mentioned MSPs needing reports in the MTP, and Jeff says, yes, please, because he's saying, I find a problem and need to fix it, then set that to automatically remediate going forward. So maybe offering up recommended policies to apply based on non-compliance and things like that. Really some automation for that compliance piece is what is sounding like.
Yes.
Running some of that to find it and then say, okay, now that we found it, let's just going forward, automate it so we don't have to manually do this again.
Yeah, so this probably won't be in the initial release. It will just be the ability to export to CSV and PDF and et cetera. But we know what types of information are coming back based on the table schema, right? So if it's around devices, systems, policies, the identifiers there, we can easily link it in and create, tasks and hot tooltip buttons to go off and do things and remediate and take action. So that's going to be the first easy step. And then, starting to think maybe if AI longer term with trying to like chain these things together, once it's come along a bit more, might be the latter.
And recommended policies based on compliance isn't necessarily something we have to have AI answer for us. So I just want to put that out there as, a conversation point that was touched on in our product conversations. So, we know it's a need, a burning need for some of you, and we want to make it easier. What is the best way we can make it easy today, tomorrow, and then eventually get to a more complete compliance solution?
Yeah, and what Nathan's saying is they would want reporting specific to them, not necessarily based on compliance. So I think the point is that you run a report for things that you need, and then whatever it is to bring it into compliance for your needs, and then even if it's a day-to-day type thing, and then set it to where it's automatically remediated from that point forward. So I don't think it necessarily has to be big C compliance. It could be compliance with your policies so that you can easily remediate it and automate it going forward, so that you don't have to like run those reports once a month and fix it. If you could just set it, say, okay, now we found this problem, let's just make sure that going forward it runs and fixes it on its own. So, I think something like that would be is what I'm hearing might be helpful. I like Rishi's suggestion of that. Yeah, we'll do a reporting Wrapped, like Spotify. I was just looking at my Spotify Wrapped last night, and it was shaming me into how many minutes I had listened to in a particular month. You reset 239,852 passwords this year. 155 devices refused to upgrade their OS until you showed up at their door. Yep. Knock, knock, knock.
Feature request.
There you go. All right. And with that, we are at our time. So thank you all for the great questions. Remember, go to the lounge if you didn't already. I already see a bunch of people have jumped in. I think we're up to 9 people already. And most of them have already raised their hands. So that's great. But you can do it anytime. Jump into the JumpCloud AI and raise your hand if you want to be part of the EA. Thank you, Lindsey and Hugh, for the great discussion. And thanks for the good conversation in the chat. We will see you next week. We've got 2 more this month before we hop off for the holidays. And by the way, next week is going to be talking about our Amazon Verified Access partnership. And on the 15th, unless things change, Raj is going to be on to talk about end of the year wrap up, and we'll have our executive Q&A. So looks like that's going to be a lot of fun. We always enjoy it when Raj is on because he always has lots of great things to say. And we're always honored when he has the time to do that. So thank you, everyone. Hope you have a great first weekend of December, and we'll see you again next Friday. Take care.
Thanks, everyone.